Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Angel, and today we're going to be making an Edgar Allan Poe bust. To start our bust, I grabbed this little skull from the Dollar Tree. Now I wanted to get rid of that plastic look, so I am going in and painting this with 2 coats of my Waverly chalk paint in the color plaster to start with. Then I'm going to set that skull aside to dry completely while I start building this little stand for the bust. Now I'm just using a little cup that had some Dollar Tree spackling in it. You can use any thicker plastic cup for this or anything you have really. But this little spackling cup is going to work perfectly for this. As you can see, I cut the top off of it and then I'm kind of squishing it to make it more of an oval shape. For the base of my bust, I'm actually using this little wood round plaque thingy that I got from Dollar Tree. And then I'm also going to be using these newer, thicker dowels that I found at Dollar Tree. And as you can see, I want this dowel to go all the way from the base piece through the cup and into the skull. And this is just going to give us a really sturdy base to work with. So I started by marking my dowel and then I cut that down to the size I needed. I also drilled a hole into that bottom wood piece, and then I poked a hole through the plastic cup, and here I did put some wood glue down in that hole, and then on the bottom of the cup I just used hot glue, and I'm gonna stick that dowel down into the hole. Then I went back around the bottom of the cup and added a line of hot glue to make this extra secure, but that is going to be covered later, so you won't be able to see that. Once the base was all secure and glued down, then I went back in with just 1 coat of my black chalk paint. Now while the base is drying, I'm going to go back to the skull and we're going to make this look more decrepit. So I added some black paint to his eyes, nose, and mouth. Kind of wiped that off with a paper towel, and then here I'm just going back in and I'm going to work in sections with some antique wax. Put this all over him and then go back in and wipe it off with the paper towel. And like I said, I just kept working with this in smaller sections, brushing it on and then wiping it off until I was happy with it. Once the antiquing wax was all dry, then I did take this and drilled a hole down in the bottom of the skull so that I could add it to that dowel. And here I am just going around hot gluing this down onto that cup. And I know from this angle it's hard to tell, but I put the hot glue on top of the cup and then just pushed the skull down onto it. Then it was time to turn the skull into Edgar Allan Poe, and of course, first of all, he needs a mustache and some hair. So we're going to grab some air dry clay, and here I'm just making his mustache, rolling that out, trying to figure out the size that I wanted. And then it was easy enough to just make the mustache by pushing the clay down and then just shaping those ends until I was happy with it. Once I had his mustache made, then I'm going to grab a little bit of water, put it on my finger, and then rub this all over the clay piece. And I wanted to make this look kind of textured like hair. So you can take any sharp object and just start scratching the clay in little small areas to make it look like hair. And while you're doing this, just imagine what a mustache looks like and do your little strokes in that direction. I used some gel super glue to attach this to the skull. However, I do wish that I would have painted this first to make it easier on myself because it was hard not to get the paint onto the skull. Now moving on to making his hair, I can tell you that I totally was just winging this. Kind of had no clue what I was doing, just knew the shape of Edgar Allan Poe's hair. He has wavy hair. So I'm rolling out some clay, as you can see, and at first this was going to be his part line, but it just didn't line up for me. So like I said, I am just winging this, rolling out clay, cutting it down, and then I'm just kind of rolling it or pinching it to make the look of the wavy hair that he has. So I'm definitely just doing this in sections because, like I said, I was just winging this and hoping for the best, but this section is just going to be for one side of his head, and then here is where I finally decided where his part was going to be, and he did usually have a side part, so I just went with that. Now I totally know that this looks a hot mess right now, but I promise this is a trust the process. So I just continued making my clay pieces, and again here I'm doing the other side, and just like on the first side, I'm rolling that front piece, and then I'm just gonna pinch and pull this clay to make those waves for his hair. And once I had that second piece on, this is how it was looking. Now at this point I realized his hair just wasn't long enough, so I did go ahead and finish off the back piece by adding another piece of clay, just smushing this clay together. I know you can see the lines where the clay is meeting, but we will fix that in just a little bit. But once I had his head covered with the clay, this is where I am going to make a couple little pieces to make his side hair longer so that it doesn't look like he has a mullet. So I just rolled out another piece of clay and kind of did an accordion fold on it, and this piece is actually going to go up under that top piece. As you may have noticed, I had not glued down any of his hair just yet, so I was able to glue those side pieces down first and then go back in with some glue and start gluing those top pieces down. Once all the pieces of his clay wig were glued down and nice and secure, then I'm gonna do exactly what I did with his mustache. Take a little bit of water on my finger and start smoothing out this clay. Anywhere where the clay pieces were meeting and you could see it, just take your finger with some water on it and start pressing those lines out. I'm also working a little quickly because I do want this clay to stay wet so that we can do the same thing that I did to his mustache and give this hair some texture and make it actually look like hair. So after I finish smoothing out everything, like I said here, I'm going back in using that little pointy tool again and just doing small strokes to make this look like hair. Just be sure to keep this wet as you're doing it. If there are any little dry spots, you will know because the little pointy tool will kind of get snagged on the clay. It should move very smoothly if this is wet enough. Once I was finished with his hair, I set this aside to dry overnight, and then here is where I am going back in and I'm going to start by painting his mustache and his hair with one coat of my black chalk paint. Like I said before, it would have been easier for me if I would have painted his mustache before gluing it onto him. However, with the hair, that's a different story. It had to be glued on before I could paint it. So I just did my best to be careful not to get any on the skull, and where I did get it on him, I tried to just wipe it off as quickly as possible. Once the first black layer was dry, then I'm going back in with a larger chippy brush and some brown paint and dry brushing that brown paint over his hair to give him some lighter highlights. I also did the same over his mustache. I also dry brushed a little bit of white paint into his hair to give it just a little more dimension and add some grays. Now it was time to make his clothes, so I'm going to start by making him a white collared shirt with some clay. I just rolled that out, cut out a long rectangle to start with, and then I rolled another piece out to make the collar. So to make this shirt, all you need is the rectangle piece and the piece that's shaped like a collar. And here I am cutting that collar in half, and you can see I am just going to place this on top of the shirt piece, and then I'm going to start pushing it over the top of it. Again, just imagine what a collared shirt looks like and just start squeezing those collar pieces over top of your shirt piece. So this is what it's going to end up looking like once I put it on him. You can see this does not go all the way around. You only need this to cover the front and the side, but also leave a space for a bow tie. So now I'm going to roll out another piece of clay, and I'm going to cut out 2 triangle pieces and a square piece to make that bow tie. Once I have all 3 pieces, I'm going to lay them out, and I'm going to put the triangle pieces under the square and just take my finger and push that square piece down. And this is what it's going to look like when I put it on him. So I did go ahead and glue the shirt piece to him, but I left the bow tie off so that I could paint it first. I'm just using some red acrylic paint in the color Red Barn. Then I'm going to make him a suit jacket by rolling out some more clay, and for this piece you're just going to need a wide long rectangle piece that's going to wrap all the way around from the back of this to the front. And you're going to want to bring those top corners down to the bottom to make this look like a jacket. So as you can see, I do have some excess at the bottom, and I'll just use my razor blade to cut that off. Once I have the general shape of the jacket, I'm going to remove this, shape those corner edges a little bit, and I am able to paint this before putting it on him, which is great, so I don't have to worry about getting any paint on his white shirt. Once the paint was completely dry, then I was able to glue his jacket onto him. I did shape it and mold it to him, and as you're doing that, the black paint is going to crack a little bit so that you see the clay underneath it. So I just went back in and went over anything that needed touching up. And once that black paint was dry and his bow tie was dry, I just glued that right onto the front of his shirt. Then finally, for this bust, obviously he needed a little name tag for the front of this. So I'm just using one of these little tags that I got from Amazon, and I'm gonna bend it a little bit to fit the shape of the bust. Then I'm gonna roll out a small piece of clay, and I'm gonna use these alphabet stamps that I got from Dollar Tree, and I'm just gonna imprint Poe into this piece of clay. Then I'm going to use one of my extra tags that I have not bent yet, and I'm just going to push it down into the clay so that the part that says Poe kind of pops up through the center, and then I was able to just peel away the excess clay. Then I popped that piece of clay into the bent little frame for it. Use some gel super glue to attach this to the front. I also added the little screws into it to make it look even better. Then finally, I just re-stamped those letters with my ink. And that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you all enjoyed this Edgar Allan Poe DIY. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.